Hey y'all, welcome to day 21 of my 30-day engagement series. My name is Shawn Aaron, he, him, his. Thank you for joining me for another day of Black trans visibility and vulnerability. So, today's topic is kind of random actually because this wasn't on my list. So, if you've been rocking with me for a few days, you know that I write out a list all the time. So, all of these questions throughout my 30-day engagement series, I had them planned out, plotted out. And so today's conversation was supposed to be about transitioning older in life. And so I was going to plug in an episode from Them Boys podcast, but then something happened to me yesterday, and I was like, you know what? I want to reflect on that. I want to reflect on that in a moment. I want to reflect on it raw with the raw emotions that I have. And so I haven't actually formulated a question for it, but I feel like once I get to talking about it, a question will arise from what I'm going to be talking about. So, but if I could just start it out, I want to say that a question would be, I don't know, how do you extend grace to people who have harmed you in any way during your transition? And so when I mean in any way, I don't mean physical harm. We're not talking about physical harm. If somebody has physically harmed you or put their hands on you, as my mom would say, put their hands on you or shook you down or anything like that, that's not what this conversation is about. And that should be handled accordingly. I'm talking about if someone has harmed you vocally. Maybe they misgendered you, or maybe they denied your transition vocally, verbally, or maybe you just feeling some that maybe some their actions towards you may have been a little shaky, and you're like, yeah, nah, I don't like that. I can't get with that. So first, I want to tell you about the experience I had, and then I want to tie that into something that happened to me in the past, where somebody called me in about something that I verbally said, and then I want to tie all of that together of how can we extend grace to folks in our lives. So, yesterday I was at my regular full-time job, and so for folks who don't know, I've talked about this during Them Boys podcast. Can't remember what episode it is right at this moment, but I'll plug it into the description. But I it was an episode about transitioning at work. And so I talked about this. So the job that I currently work at now, outside of the work that I do as the founder and executive director of Them Boys Inc., I work at another place. And so one of my coworkers, I've been working there for, I want to say, 20 something years. It's like 23 years at this point. So I transitioned in 2013. So that means I transitioned at work. And so a lot of the folks that I've been working with for 20 plus years have seen me move and shift through my transition. Now, I also talk about within that episode that I didn't have any issues at work while transitioning. And I know that that's a privilege because so many of our trans mass folks, trans identified folks, don't get that same privilege. And so a lot of folks have seen me grow. A lot of folks have seen me transition to who I am, going from, a small fade on my head, short hair, to now being bald, to having a smooth face, to now having a beard and a mustache, right? So all the phases. And so yesterday when I was at work, I just, me and my counterpart, we started at the same time, but he came in just a tad bit earlier than me. And so I came in maybe 5 minutes after him. Anyway, we work we work in the same location, but it's split up into rooms. So it's kind of the same location, but it's like right next to each other. So anyway, within these two rooms, there's a shared bathroom. And so there it's a gender bathroom. It's not a gender neutral restroom, but it's a women and men's restroom. Anyway, I didn't ask him for this. This is something that he voluntarily said to me. So I was getting ready to walk away and go into my prospective, destination or room or whatever. And he said, "Hey, yo, Shawn, I just wanted to let you know that if you have to go to the restroom." So let me go back just a second. So the restroom within this room is not the only restroom in this building or in the location. It's just closer and it's more convenient. And so he said, "Hey, if you got to go to the restroom, I just wanted to let you know that all of the stalls are down. There's only urinals there. So I just want to let you know so you don't waste your time in going there. If you got to go to the restroom, you might want to go to one that's a little bit farther." Now, mind you, I thought about this in my head, I processed it, and I said, first I thanked him. I said, "Oh yeah, thank you. I appreciate that." And then I thought about it really quickly, and then I turned around and said, "You know what, man? I appreciate you. Thank you for telling me that." And I didn't go into details. He said, "No problem. I got your back." We didn't go into any details about how I use the restroom. This conversation was unprovoked. It wasn't a, you need to sit type of situation, you need to stand type of situation. He felt that it was necessary as my counterpart part to let me know that if I needed to access a restroom in a certain type of way, he didn't say that he knew how or why or how anything, but he also knows that I'm a transmasculine individual. But I felt in that moment, I felt affirmed for one, I felt seen, and I felt respected. And so I just walked away and I was like, that was a very interesting engagement between me and my coworker. And I said, I don't, I never discussed any way I have to use the restroom or anything to him, but I respected the fact that he took my well being into consideration and gave me this warning. And so, okay, so hold on to that, right? So, some years ago, in the beginning of my transition, I was leading a workshop, and it was about community building. And it wasn't just trans folks in the room, there were feminine folks in the room, and there were only three trans mask folks in the room, and I was one of them. So, I was holding this workshop, and it's called a fishbowl activity, a fishbowl uh, I'm gonna just say fishbowl activity. Now, for folks who don't know what that is, that's the term that I know it by, called a fishbowl. And so, what the idea behind it is that you get a group of folks, you put so in the larger circles, everyone is in a circle in the room, right? And so, say that there's 50 people, so 50 people in a circle around, forming a circle with their chairs around in a room. And so the fishbowl is you take maybe five or six of those chairs and you put a smaller circle inside of the bigger circle and have folks sit in the smaller circle in the middle of the room. And so the idea is those six people are considered fish, and they sit, you ask a question, and the folks on the outside of the circle just observe the conversation between the six folks in the middle. And so it mimics a kind of fishbowl dynamic, right? When you look into an aquarium, you see the fish in their habitat, they're moving, they're eating, they're interacting with each other, and you're on the outside looking at all the fish, right? And so once the folks got into the smaller circle, and I'm leading this workshop, and so I posed a question, and then I said, okay, fish, start the conversation. And so what's supposed to happen is they have this conversation, this dialogue amongst each other. The folks on the outside are observing, but then after the time, you give maybe like a 5 to 10 minute discussion time. The folks on the outside get to chime in about what they observed from the folks in the inside. So we went on as usual. I probably said, "Hey, let's come on, fish," maybe a few times, right? And so within that smaller circle, I want to note that within that smaller circle, there were only feminine presenting folks in that circle. I don't know if you can tell by this story what was problematic about this or not, but I'm gonna tell you. So after the workshop, somebody pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, you might want to think about reframing the name of this particular activity, because with it being all feminine presenting folks in the middle of the circle and you saying the word fish, that is a negative and derogatory term towards women." And I didn't get it. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't get it today. And I'm going to tell you why. And I thought about it and I said, oh, okay, thank you for telling me. I appreciate that. I'll be more aware in the future. And so I still don't get it. I'm going to tell you why I don't get it. I don't get it because I'm in my vocabulary and in the ways that I communicate with people or I refer to women would not be by fish. Like, to me, that's I just don't understand why somebody would say that. But it's a derogatory term considered by feminine presenting folks. And so that word was never used in another workshop because I didn't want to offend or harm anybody by the words that I was saying. So I guess the activity could be called an aquarium activity, right? Instead of saying the word fish. And so that person called me in a very healthy way. I don't know if anyone in this activity was harmed, right? And so I'm going to put that disclaimer. I don't know if anyone was personally harmed by that. I don't know if anybody said, ugh, or cringed because I said that. I'm not sure about that. That wasn't brought to me. The thing that was brought to me was the what I said, the harm that it could possibly cause, and how to correct that in the future. So I want to tie both of these stories together. And so I guess this does apply the question that I said in the beginning of how do you extend grace to people who have harmed you in any way during your transition. So most folks, I'm not going to even say most folks. I'm going to say me. In my trans journey, of course, I've been misgendered. No, I haven't been misgendered at work, but I have been misgendered before. I kind of have a little passing privilege now, so I'm not really misgendered as much or at all. Every now and then, somebody will say "ma'am," and I say, "What the hell you say?" I get real defensive, but I have to. I don't know why they say it, but usually once I'm very stern and I correct it, has been, "Listen, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, sir." But anyway, what do you do when somebody harms you by misgendering you? So now there's a difference between oops, I didn't mean to and I'm sorry and it's corrected as opposed to no, I don't give a damn what you say. I see you as this and I'm going to keep using that, right? Now that's borderline disrespect. That enters boundary crossing and it enters the area of disrespect. And so what I want to say is, I think to tie all of this together is sometimes we have to give folks a little bit of grace. Now you have to know when there's harm, when there's harm behind it, when somebody is being malicious, even sadistic, right? You have to really know, and you can tell within your inner person of like this person is just now. If this is your cousin and they keep calling you she, and you already know that you done told your family that you transition and to watch your mouth. Now that's a little different, right? You have to gauge how much grace that you want to give a person like that. Now that's your own personal idea of what grace means to you, extended grace means to you. But what I'm saying is sometimes people just don't have the language. Sometimes people just don't know the language. Sometimes it's just not within their peripheral of words to use. Sometimes it's not in their vocabulary. It's not their idea of what they see or know. Maybe they haven't been exposed to trans folks. Maybe they don't understand. Some people just genuinely don't understand. Right. And so just like with this, the aquarium activity, I didn't understand. That wasn't something that was in my peripheral. That wasn't something that was in my vocabulary to use towards feminine identified people. And so not that I was trying to be intentionally malicious, I just didn't have that awareness about it. And that's possible, right? It's like making space for people to learn you, making space for people to grow with you, and making space for people to make mistakes. And even as trans identified people, me as a trans identified trans person, man, I even made a mistake, right? And it's about being held accountable. And it's also about what you do when you are being held accountable. Are you taking responsibility for the things that you said? Are you taking responsibility for the things that you did? Right. And so when you allow people to kind of like grow and you allow people to kind of observe you, if you allow people and then you extend grace, then you can have interactions with people like the first situation I mentioned in the beginning. And so I was thinking that of like, me and him have never had a conversation about my transition, right? I remember once at work, I asked, this was earlier in my transition. It was one of my coworkers I hadn't seen in a very long time. And so we all work in different locations, different departments. And so we don't always see each other all the time. It could be a year or two before I see somebody that I haven't seen in a long time. And I'm like, whoa, I haven't seen you in a long time, right? And so even now, like folks see me and they haven't seen me in a year or two. And I've been growing my beard out now for 2 years. And so they say, "Oh shit, you grow a beard, bro. That look nice, right? I haven't seen you in so long, right?" These are interactions, right? But this is also about, because me and this coworker never had this conversation. It's about, in general, right? I have given people in my lives that see me on a daily or not on a daily time to grow, right? And trust me, in the beginning of my transition, people didn't understand it, right? I didn't even understand it, right? And you got to think about that too, right? Like, we are literally transitioning and going through puberty at an adult age at times, right? And so it's like, when you were a teenager and you went through puberty, you didn't understand none of this shit, right? But now as an adult, you can monitor it if you're aware, right? If you're hyper aware about your transition and you are really monitoring the direction your transition is going, right? Some folks say, "I just want to take the tea. I just want to get to the end." But if you just really sit back and monitor, you will realize all of the changes that your body is going through. And sometimes you won't understand. I didn't understand my anger year one, year two. I didn't understand the acne that I got year one, year two. I didn't understand the changes that I got that the doctor maybe didn't list on that paper of changes that was going to happen to me, right? Because all of our journeys are different. We're all different. We're not monolithic, right? And so even with HRT, we all have different results. And so I think, just to go back, it's like extending grace to people and allowing people to grow, allowing people to observe the language, right? Because we know, even within community, language changes all the time. Language is forever evolving. And I'm sure that when language started to shift, folks that were in community way before we were now, were like, "Oh, I don't like that language. That's not the language we use." We use, right? Just like back in Shakespeare time, when somebody would say, where is thou? Where has thou been?" I don't know. However that would go, right? We don't talk like that now, right? We don't speak like that. So that's not something that I'm familiar with. But I'm sure when people started to communicate and say, "Where you going? Where have you been?" And then somebody that wasn't used to that was like, "What kind of language is that?" Right? We don't say it like that, right? And so it's given space to grow into, now it's common knowledge. It's common language of what we're using now, right? And so I just really thought that this was a really good reflection. It's just a little bit for me, and maybe I'm touching all of the spots, or maybe I'm not hitting all the spots to make the connection. I hope that I am. But it's just about giving folks grace, right? And I know there are people in my life that I do not extend grace. When we're talking about my birth mother, I'm not extending any more grace, right? I've been in my transition 13 years, 12 years now. It's like, there's no more grace to give. Either you get it or you don't, or you won't be in my life, right? And so it's knowing that difference, right, of who you really value and who really values you, right? And who do you want to waste your energy or extend extra energy on to teach the language, or to for them to learn who you are, to extend the grace. And that's all up to us, right? That's all up to each individual, and each individual in our journey, and what we want to tolerate and what we don't want to tolerate, what we want to teach people and what we don't want to teach people, and what we want to learn for ourselves and others to learn about us, right? And so, how do you extend grace to the people who have harmed you in your life? So I want you to comment below. Is there something that you feel like I missed? Is there something that you would like to add? How do you extend grace to the people in your life? Are there times when you were misgendered and you had to correct someone? What did you do? I would love to hear from you. So be sure to comment below. Be sure, if you have been enjoying this content, be sure to share it with folks within your networks that you know would enjoy some of the topics and conversations that I've been having here. So once again, my name is Shawn Aaron, he, him, his, and this is day 21 of my 30-day engagement. If you've been rocking with me since day one, thank you. If this is your first time here, also thank you and welcome. And so be sure to join me tomorrow, because tomorrow's conversation will be about transitioning later in life. So take care.